Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
And welcome to America's Heroes Group, the Roundtable, legally speaking, with Stephen J. Seidman. Women's History Month is this month in March. And it's also Disability Awareness Month. Today is Saturday, March 26, 2022. You just heard our host, Cliff Kelley. I am Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive media producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scout to Honor Productions. Welcome to today's show. We have a live one for you today. We have Stephen J. Seidman, the founding attorney of Seidman Law Office, with over 30 years of experience in trial lawyer focused on personal injury and also issues pertaining to veterans' benefits and veterans' legal rights. Steve is an American Heroes Group partner, sponsor, and advisory board member. How you doing, Steve?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you today?
Pretty good, pretty good. So you want to update us on some legal issues. Let's get right into it. What is going on that we need to know about
There's
right
a lot
now?
of various things happening that I'd like to just discuss. One was during the State of the Union address, President Biden mentioned the term burn pits. I don't know how many of you heard the term burn pits. And, he mentioned that while discussing health benefits for military veterans. Now, most of the people, I don't think many Americans have even know what burn pits are. But right now, Congress is crafting and creating legislation to help post 9/11 combat veterans who were exposed to toxic smoke from burn pits. And what contractors used to do in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places after 9/11 was they actually put all this stuff in pits, and they disposed of human waste, of chemicals, munitions, all kinds of hazardous materials. They put these in these burn pits, and soldiers used to have to kind of be the ones to have to monitor the smoke, and they were exposed to it. Much like 9/11, while the firefighters, you saw many years later, many got cancer, died because of what they were exposed to. So right now, the Congress is sort of crafting this legislation for toxic smoke. Now, caused by the burn pits, by all this stuff, and many veterans, anybody who had probably been in Iraq and Afghanistan, were exposed to these things. So you have to watch carefully to see what type of things you might develop. For instance, in South Dakota, there's a soldier, an Army National Guard soldier, who went during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he came back. He's an insurance executive. He started to experience tremors in his hands. A few years after returning from southern Iraq, the shaking spread to both sides of the body, down his legs. Last year, a doctor diagnosed him with Parkinson's disease, a progressive nervous disorder, as we all know, and he had no family history of disease. He shakes uncontrollably, and of course, so he applied for the benefits, for veterans benefits, to compensate him, and they denied him. Now, I have a feeling that might have been a denial because of causation, but the point is that the veterans who are listening today and who were exposed to these burning pits ought to be aware of cancers, Parkinson's disease, all kinds of issues that are out there. The bill that we talked about in the House of Representatives, it was a bipartisan bill, both sides, that would expand health care eligibility for veterans exposed to burn pits. It would guarantee that veterans with 23 health conditions no longer have to prove that their illnesses were the result of their military service to receive benefits. So, finally. So basically it's going to be like a strict liability, what we call in law, that if they provide that they had disability benefits, that they were exposed to a hostile fire zone, and sort of like if they were exposed to Agent Orange during the Vietnam War, where Cliff was at, there was a presumption that Agent Orange caused the problems. What I just talked about with that person in South Dakota who lost the case, here now with this new bill, there's no need to prove the condition was linked to military pits. It might be as good as just being exposed to the substances that can cause damage to the respiratory system, skin, nervous system, cardiovascular system, many forms of cancer. And it is interesting that there's evidence, and if we go back a little bit about this, that there's evidence maybe that linked the death of President Biden's son, Beau, from brain cancer.
Yeah.
And he was exposed to airborne toxins from burn pits during his military services in Kosovo and Iraq. Now, I think the reason one of the reasons I'm mentioning this is I think that the veterans ought to know about this who are listening to the show. So if they feel that they have these issues, they ought to look at the 23 conditions that are caused. But also, of course, it's the same old thing. Critics are contending that the legislation will cost too much. It's going to cost $300 billion over the next 10 years, and that would put additional stress on the Veterans Administration. But the point of fact is that we saw it with the 9/11 people who went in there when everything was going down. They went in and they were exposed for many days, weeks afterwards of all kinds of toxins. Many of them were horribly affected. Same thing should go with the veterans. And so I think that when you talk to your congressmen, senators, I think that everybody ought to kind of chime in and say, pass this bill for the veterans.
You touched on a couple of things that I thought was really critical. So the pushback is, Mike, it's going to cost $300 billion. However, what price do you put on a human life? What price do you put on a veteran's life who served your country, risked their life to serve your country? And burn pits, and one thing you want to reiterate is the fact that burn pits were something that wasn't just an isolated incident. That is the way, and when you're overseas and you're deployed, especially in certain environments, how you dispose of just about all your trash. It's burned. They create they dig big pits. They could be a football field, or it could be as small as a trash can, and you burn whatever it is you're trying to destroy. It could be a truck. It could be tires. It could be whatever. All of these toxic chemicals going on for days and days and days. So you might have years worth of exposure to these toxic fumes, and that can affect your body years and years and years later. So this is dismiss it and say, well, you have to prove that this is something that actually is linked to your service. To me, it was a ridiculous thing to even try to bring up in the first place.
I agree, and I think it is amazing to think, and just to get sort of conceptualize the size of these pits. As you said, they could be as big as a football field and bigger. And what they put in there was everything, not just human waste, chemicals, munitions, everything. So could you imagine, it's similar to what happened during the explosion in 9/11, all the stuff, all those toxins being released, people smelling them, the people who are, the soldiers who are working to monitor the fires so they don't get out of control, they're exposed to this stuff. Imagine what you're taking in. You said a year's worth. I think it could be a decade's worth of toxins you're taking in. I mean, so the fact that up to this point, this poor guy in South Dakota he had to prove that the Parkinson's disease was caused, even though he had no family history, was there had to be a causal nexus to these burn pits, was ridiculous. And so this new legislation, even though it's going to cost a ton, is worth it, because I can't imagine how many soldiers were exposed to this and what kind of the tip of the iceberg we're going to see in the next 10 years when people age and when the cancers start to attack their bodies.
Yeah, and then keep in mind, when we spend $700 billion plus, quickly approaching $1 trillion a year on hardware, military hardware. Not talking about lives, we're not talking about we are talking about payroll, but we're talking about just the hardware that we don't even use half the time to go to war. So we need to rethink and start thinking about how do we treat veterans when they come back from service. And it's almost like as if the argument would be, well, okay, I know I hit your car and it caused all this damage, but geez, it's going to cost me, my liability is going to cost me so much money. I'm not going to pay that. If you caused the problem, then you should pay for what you broke.
Yeah, and when you consider that during the pandemic, rightfully so, there were trillions of dollars pumped into the economy to just make sure people could live economically. Mm-hmm. I mean, the fact is you look at the service that these people they did for the country, and then what they were exposed to, it's a small price to pay for their health and safety and for their well-being.
Now, Steve, what's your number? Tell people how they get in contact with you. If they have cases, they have issues, they need to find out what to do next. And because I want to tell you, most veterans that have been deployed have been exposed to a burn pit at some point. And the exposure is not as a casual exposure where you're driving through. It's a daily, constant thing.
Right, and if anybody has any questions about it, my number is 312-781-1977. And one of the things that people need to do is, most importantly, pay attention. Pay attention to what happens to their body look at yourself and say, boy, you know what? I can't breathe. I'm having some emphysema. That's what the VA system is there for, to make these claims. But in order to start the claims, you have to first, A, know there's something wrong, but B, you have to think, boy, was I working in a burn pit area? Could this cancer that I have, this lymphoma, could it be caused by this? And that's where a doctor comes in. And nowadays, if this legislation passes, it's going to be strict liability. All you have to do is go to the center, file your claim, tell them that you worked, where you worked with the burn pit. They'll verify it. And I believe under this new bill, you get the benefits. And I think that people ought to know that that's going to exist for them. So 312-781-1977 with any questions about this or any other type of personal injury or workers' comp law, for sure.
Appreciate that. Now, also, do you think, is this a precedent for a president, a sitting president, to come out so quickly to address health issues for veterans?
It is. And I got to tell you, when I heard this, because I had been talking, or at least following the burn pit situation for at least 3 years, but when President Biden got in office, and really his first full State of the Union address, because of course the last year with everything going on, there wasn't one, for him to address it in one of his first speeches, and to say, and to point it out, that the burn pit exposure with regards to veterans, he said, the veterans and burn pits, and I'm going to help the veterans who are exposed to burn pit. Now, it is very unusual, and the reason that I feel that this was done to some degree is I believe that he thinks his son was exposed to these type of toxins, and I believe he thinks that this might have impacted. Of course, this is pure speculation on my part, but I think that maybe the president thought that his own son lost his life to being exposed to these pits and the toxic smoke and all of the other exposures there. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that that's why, because I had never heard a president come out and day one, really first State of Union address, and mention terms that discussing health benefits, and then specifically talk about something where there had been really no concentration or no discussion of. So, yeah, I think it was unusual. I do.
Going back to this money issue, the pushback on helping out veterans, help veterans stay alive after serving their country. I want to point out people that went overseas to fight a war under the main premise of defending our freedom, defending this country, put themselves and their own bodies at risk, and then come back, and then they have pushback to try to get medical care. I want to make that clear. So,
sorry.
No. So the thing is it truly just about the money on the pushback side of things, or are there other things that they're concerned about?
Well, at least on the surface, it's about money. From my perspective, I can't imagine, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're liberal, whether you're conservative, that you could have any ill will or towards veterans and trying to help veterans. So I would hope that it's just about the money and the concern of fiscal responsibility that some people might raise. But, who knows? I'd give you another example, if I could, that came out this week. The VA Caregiver program. Now, many people might not know this, but like the Illinois Department of Health and Family Services, if you have someone who's disabled in your house and they're on public aid or in that situation, do you know that if you're a personal caregiver, you could get paid through the state for taking care of your loved one who's disabled? The same thing exists for veterans. It's called the VA Caregiver program. And what happens is people could get up to $3,000 every few months. I'm going to get the exact number for you, to help their loved one who have been injured in war or in service, and they're called the Veteran Affairs Caregiver Support Program. So over the years, you could get a stipend they hover around $3,000 a month for a full level 2 stipend, which is a very serious injured individual, and about $1,800 for what's called a partial level 1 stipend. So it could add up to $36,000, $24,000 a year if you have a loved one who you're taking care of who was injured in service. And this might now, if we go back to the burn pit situation, If people get cancer and you could get the burn pit stipend or benefits through that legislation, a loved one could take care of you when you're dying of whatever that is or dealing with that. The problem is, over the last couple months, and this came out just the other day, there has been a pushback on the caregiver support programs and a stoppage of it. They've grandfathered certain people into the program, but they've taken on, they call those legacy participants, and those were people admitted before October 2020. But unless they meet new eligibility criteria within the last couple of years, they're out. So people are getting dismissed, and as much as 1/3 of the nearly 20,000 legacy participants could be dropped from the program. Now, you just talked about money, and you just talked about the importance of taking care of our veterans when they get home. Why is it that over the last month or two that there has been money that had been taken away from the caregivers, and now these people are not allowed to get paid for taking care of their loved ones or others who have been greatly injured or disabled through service?
That's
so
crazy.
it just came out this week, March 23rd. There was an article about it, and I think that we better watch this over the next couple months because, once again, is it fiscal? I mean, what else could it be? Are you saying that, well, gee, veterans don't deserve to get the care that they always had? This program existed, although many people might not have known a lot about it. It existed for many years.
The thing of it is that we can fix that. If it's a monetary problem, that can be fixed and that can be solved through thinking and through math. That's a math problem.
Yeah.
And we can reallocate resources. But one thing we cannot shortcut on is somebody's life, especially someone's life that you owe, someone that actually has a contract with the people of America that says, hey, I went and I did my time, I served my country, I expect to be taken care of when I come home. They're doing the job, the veterans are doing the jobs that most Americans don't want to do, but it has to be done oftentimes. Not to say that every war was valid or every war we're fighting was something that needed to be done, but it was something that was called for. It was something that was legislated. People were sent, oftentimes leaving their families and didn't want to do that, didn't want to have to go do these things, put in harm's way. So you can't just turn your back and just deny the bill when it comes in and say, I'm not going to pay that bill. It has to be paid. I mean, if we have to sacrifice a few jets or an aircraft carrier because of the fact that we have to take care of the decisions we've made to go to war in the first place, then that's what we need to do. Otherwise, we're not going to have a society that really is going to be able to muster up the support. Like you see the Ukrainians fighting right now. What are they fighting for? They're fighting for their own self-determination to be. They're saying to the former Soviet Union, Russia, they're saying, hey, we do not want to go back to the old Soviet days. We don't want to have that kind of lifestyle. We want to create our own destiny, have our own freedom, do what we want to do going forward. And we don't care if you come with your tanks and things like that. So we need to have the same kind of attitude for our veterans. We need to make sure that we fight for our veterans the way our veterans fought for us.
Right, and don't forget, I mean, the way I look at this now is if you don't want to go to the military, you don't have to. So the people who fight are volunteers, and the people who fight for us and for our freedoms and for what we have as we sit here in this country that people don't have in Ukraine, those are people who are risking their livelihood to go do this for us. So as payment, I think that's a lot more important than a lot of other things that we pay for. You know what? These people deserve to be taken care of, period, end of story. And if we're taking money and programs away from them, and we're not going to put in the billions of dollars necessary for the burn pit, and we're going to take away VA caregiver programs and the stipends that people get for taking care of injured, then we're not, you know what, it's going to hurt us. As you just pointed out, that is going to hurt us. And this is the freedom that we enjoy because of those people who are out there fighting for us. So, and if I give you another example of just in a daily law practice that we see, you know, a lot of times veterans are fired because why? They're reservists who have to take off time from work. There's a law that says that you cannot terminate or discipline a veteran who is taking time off of work to do their reservist activities. Recently, Volvo was sued and went to trial. Illinois federal jury heard that the car maker wrongfully terminated her out of frustration over her military services and the absences it required. In point of fact, I believe Walmart settled something like that, settled the case. I'm not quite sure, but I believe they did about a year or two ago. In that case with Volvo, the Illinois jury sided with Volvo and said there were other reasons. But the point is that if you're a veteran and if you're a reservist and if you're out there and doing your thing and you think you're getting discriminated at work, fired for losing time because of that, you may sue. That you have a cause of action. I think I'm running out of time, so I want to open up to you, Sean, if you had any comments or questions.
That was good information, Steve. And one thing, if people are listening and need to get information about what they can do to protect themselves legally, make sure you go to our website, americashg.org, and also find out more information about the things that you're entitled to. Reach out to Steve. He's a great guy, great attorney. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.